Everybody. My name is Evan Radisic. I'm the Managing Director of the Cloud Software Association. And today we have with us Zach Svendsen. He's the Senior Director of Alliances and Business Development at Tipalti. He's going to be taking us through a lot here today. Interestingly enough, he's built a team starting from a person of one to what is a team of 17 and growing now, and all the things associated with doing such a thing. So we've got a whole bunch of questions. I've got a whole bunch of questions I'm going to ask Zach. He's got some things he's going to show us and really kind of just walk us through what his experience and journey over the last 2 years of building this team was like. So I'm going to kick it off. So actually, you know what? Why don't we, Zach? Why don't you just do a quick intro of yourself, what you're doing, and then we'll shoot with the first question.
You bet. Thanks, Evan. Thanks, everyone. So Zach Svendsen here. I've been with Tipalti now for a little over 2 years, about 2.5 years. As Evan said, I manage all things business development, channels, and alliances. My history has been in both sales and alliances, all the way back for the last probably 12, 14 years with a company called SPS Commerce, where I really cut my teeth in all things channels and alliances, and been dancing in the partnership world since then. So I'm based in Minnesota. That's why I sound Canadian. I have a lovely wife and 3 kids that keep me busy as well.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So, I mean, I don't know where to start. Obviously, building a team from scratch, and I think everybody's been in that position where they're kind of this team of one, myself included, right? You're kind of brought on, and there's usually, at least from a CEO level, they're looking at it and saying, look, there's an opportunity here for whatever reason that is. Let's bring somebody on to look into it and kind of build this thing out. So they would have brought you in with some preconceived notions of what this thing could be. And there was probably some sort of big ask, like, hey, we have this much, revenue coming through partners. You got to bring it into like $1 billion, whatever that number was. There was some sort of ask there. So I'm really curious what that first conversation with the CEO was like. What that first meeting when you're nervous as hell, they have an idea, and how did that go? And then how did that fifth conversation go?
Yeah. So it was interesting. It was definitely interesting. So they brought me on board at Tipalti knowing that there was something special about partners, right? That the close rate seemed to be higher, that the ACV seemed a little bit higher. They didn't really know a whole lot about it. So they took me on to figure it out. And the first conversation was basically that, hey, we know something's here. We need someone to figure it out. And we need you to get to 30% of overall revenue in the next couple of years, sourced by the alliances team.
Yeah, 30% is big, right? That must have just turned some hairs in your back. Especially for a payment solution where there's a lot of revenue coming through that, right? So
it is. It was a huge ask, and especially when I asked, well, where are we now? And at that point in time, we were 7%. So it was oh wow moment. And I remember thinking it was a lot like it was really exciting, right? Because I love a challenge, and I think most people in partnerships do, and that's why we're in this, right? Because it's exciting. There's new things each and every day. But it was a lot like having my first child too, right? It was like, this is sweet, and then oh no, like what do I do now? It was a ton of responsibility. It was time to just roll the sleeves and kind of get into it. The fifth conversation was a little bit different because I had a chance to kind of dig in and do some research, figure out what we've done, kind of segment some of the partners that we've done, figure out exact close rates based on partnership groups, based off of some initial data. And it gave me also a chance to lay out what my asks were in order to get from 7% to 30%. And so I love that they gave me a goal, because that gave me an opportunity to say, if you want me to get to that goal, this is what I need, as opposed to just kind of, hey, can you go build a partnership program? If they didn't have a goal, I would have to set one for them. And that's not nearly as strong to tie back to as them setting the goal for me. So I think that was paramount in the success of our program, having them come up with that goal.
And was that something that was already, so that was already there? That was, they would have done some sort of research or consultancy or something to say, look, this is feasible enough. Maybe it was a CFO kind of conversation around, maybe it's that ACV or whatever, and figuring out, okay, like this is an achievable goal based on whatever parameters. So did you feel like you were kind of being handed off this kind of unachievable thing, or did you look at it and be like, okay, at that point and be like, okay, like this is going to be a lot of work, but it's doable. And you kind of probably at that point you were kind of like some ideas were running through your head on. I'm like, okay, I could put this together. I could put this together to get there. Like, can you just walk me through kind of what that thought process was around? Yes, it's achievable. What are my 10 steps over the next year that I need to check off before I get there?
Yeah. So I can, there was a lot.
Yeah, because I mean, you would have to model it out, right? You had to model out something and be like, okay, I'm going to start with one, partner success manager, and then I'm going to make them successful, and then, move that to 2 and then 4. And, so what was that kind of modeling like that you went through?
Yeah, you bet. So I can share my screen. There's a couple different things that I went through and needed to capture data first on. And so it was, I kind of built out this, can you give me access here to share?
You should be able to, I'm not sure. Let me see here.
While you're working through it, it really was, all right.
You should be good.
All right. So it really boiled down to a couple different things. It really first was like, what's my first 90 days look like? And figuring out, right, where are we now? Where do we want to be? And so there's a ton of questions, and there's a much more detailed sheet I have, but this is kind of like the framework of what it really looked like for the first 90 days. Wow. And all the tasks that were associated with it, right? And I really broke it down. I spent really the first week, actually I spent the week before I started here, really outlining everything that I needed to know. I did research as many places as I could. The CSA really wasn't as popular as it is now, so I wasn't able to glean as much information as available now being a member of the group. But there were a ton of resources to kind of go after. There's also another...
Sorry, I'm seeing a lot of things here that are really kind of interesting, because I mean, you're looking at everything from, gain consensus with key stakeholders, right? Like that is a feat of its own, right? And then the next one over on the planning, create 3-year plan. So there's a lot of stuff here that obviously is a project of its own, right? Like those were heavy lifts on their own, but to have this vision and be like, if I complete these, I'm going to be at a good spot.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And the good and bad of this is a lot of more work comes out of this once you start digging into it, but it gave me a benchmark of what I needed to accomplish in order to be successful and get to that 30%. One of the other things that I found that was really useful was I found data from as many sites as I could that was shareable with our CFO and our CEO and the CMO, really to say, okay, in order to do this, we need to figure out what the levels of maturity really are in an alliances program. And I broke it down based off of their goal with 0 to 20% of revenue, and then 20 to 50 and 50 to 100. I knew we didn't want to get there or go here at all. So it was really focusing on what we need to build now, and then what we need to build in order to get to that 30%. And tie everything back to that with what my asks were from the business. So I really just kind of used their metric, their goal to tie everything back to, and then got as much information as possible to support it. Right.
So on the resource allocation, like to get from that, obviously 0 to 20% and then 20 to 50, there's probably kind of an exponential resource allocation thing that's happening there. So like, did you go in with a specific financial ask on like, here's kind of the investment I need to bring this forward over the next like 6-8 months, or was it kind of incremental? Was like, okay, we'll bring in a partner, we're bringing in some revenue. Great. We're now going to justify that revenue that we've secured with one partner to justify the investment for the next tranche, and so on. Was it kind of bite size, or were you kind of, going in like commitment stages?
It was both, really. So it was, and COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench and everything with a hiring freeze, but it really was a 3-year plan, as it showed right here, of kind of like what I see this turning into, based off of the modeling, which was basically, if you look here, I'll zoom this up here a little bit too for everyone. It boiled down to figuring out, prior to me coming, what was the number of qualified ops. If you looked here, right here, I mean, the key metrics being leads and opportunities in 0 to 20. So let's leverage that. Let's tie everything together here. And then let's look at total qualified ops from our partner community, and how that equated to the number of full-time ramped employees we had, and what that average ramped employee can give, right? So I started digging through it a little bit more, historical data, and then modeling out the people I had, myself being an IC for a little bit, and then adding on new employees, and even just putting the lowest numbers possible, at even in the 14s of average full-time ramped equivalent, modeling that out against a couple different things here too. And so this is some dummy data in here. But if I just looked at, one of the other important things too to mention is, I really had to sell our C-level staff on that there's a much longer ramp time for an alliances professional or a partners professional than there is with a sales rep or any other function within inside the business. Not only because it takes time to build out new ecosystems, but the partners have a ramp time too. So you're doubly ramped. You're ramped on the employee, figuring out what it is that the company does, how they operate, what the value prop is, et cetera. But then they need to go and teach that to the partners. And that's something that I think is often overlooked, because it's really difficult to ramp in conjunction with a partner. You need to be fully ramped and have a full understanding of the business to then in turn ramp partners. So I broke out ramping over a 3-quarter, 2 full quarters plus a quarter they're hired, really. I also broke down that their close rates are going to be lower than they will when they're fully ramped, because they're going to find bad opportunities and bad partners, because they're not going to know enough, right? And so I broke it down. Just 25% is what you can expect out of the first quarter. Average qualified is 18, so they're going to get 4.5 opportunities. If they close 1, they're going to get about 40K in bookings. There was a couple other things that I did based off of commissions for the partner, and then commissions for the sales reps, and then what our load was too, right? To really figure out if that was profitable and when it turns into profitability on each deal. And it really turned into, we're building for next year. That was the story I kept saying. We're building for next year. We're building to get to 30%. But as you can see, full-time ramp, I really feel like $1 million full-time ramp is what you should be able to expect, plus or minus a little bit for each alliance professional, for them to have sourced bookings. Obviously that changes per industry, but that seems to be kind of the number that's stayed true across my career as well.
Yeah,
so
on the ramp piece of it, because it's like, you're right, it's not your typical sales function where there's like, okay, like here's the talk tracks, here's, and you can kind of within some certainty know that, if you've really done your job, that within, a month, 2 months, 3 months, they're going to have certain kind of ability to perform. With the partner professional, like, you're right, it's not just about, you do have that sales function as well, but you're also teaching the partner the sales function as well. So you're kind of a sales enablement manager as well as a sales rep. But then you're also working with like that kind of generalist of, getting to know the partner, getting to know what their, what their industry is, how they can work with us. So there's kind of this generalist operations kind of piece of it that, is not your typical thing, right? So it's like, you really kind of have to either walk into it with some experience or kind of learn through trial and error. So yeah, you're right. Probably like you are probably going to identify some wrong partners, or at least activate them in the wrong way. The expectations are going to be misaligned. There's going to be a few of those that are just like, oh, okay, not going to do that again. and then rinse and repeat until you kind of nail it, right?
100%. You're spot on.
So did you guys so was it a steady incline? Like were you kind of like what was the first 5 people, for example? Like was it, a person every few months and then 2 years you got 17, or was there kind of like a hockey stick at some point where like you've really figured out what the ramp period was and you're like, okay, we can put 4 bodies on this, this quarter and really kind of ramp up, or how was that?
It's a very good question. So in 19, this was kind of like when I started as Q1 in 19. From there, we did something unique to it, and the first hire for the group wasn't actually an individual contributor. It was a BDR, business development representative. And what they did was unique. We were lucky enough to have a really good marketing team that was already promoting to partners. So there was a lot of awareness. If you kind of think of all the key functions of a partnership, you have to build the awareness, you have to recruit the partners, and then enable and manage them. We had that awareness piece pretty good. We couldn't even handle all the inbound inquiries on what it is that we're doing, what makes us different. And that's not a unfamiliar story that I've been told from other alliance professionals too, that there is a lot of inbound requests, which it's hard to manage that while proactively reaching out to partners who are going to be good. And then you can't find the diamond in the rough, or it goes to an SDR team or someone who's not properly equipped. So we spent time building up a BDR to handle the inbound as well as the help us outbound to partners we wanted to get in front of based off of the ideal partner profile we created off the initial data set we did on who's the most profitable partners, what do they look like. So that was the first hire. From there, we had 3 more hires with individual contributor roles right off the bat in Q3 and Q4. And from there, we had a really aggressive 2020 plan that would have been the hockey stick. We put everything on hold kind of. We had one change out, and the hockey stick really started happening once we proved out the model too. So about a year later, once my projections were relatively in line with the actuals, then I was able to say, well, let's go full bore on it. And that's when we started doing all of this right here. So you can see as it aligns to Q1 Q4 of 20 really is where we started to really push it. And then from there, you can see in the last 6 months, basically, we've gone from a team of 5 or 6 to basically a team of 20 right now. So we're a team of 17 right now, as it says, but we have 3 more who are starting in the next week or 2 weeks. So
yeah, I saw that. I think you have what 2, 3 job postings on the CSA board, job board as well. So you're actually, are those the 3 you're talking about?
No, we're starting 2 more in the financial services market. We have another one starting for our NetSuite partners, and then we have 4 open headcounts, 1 in our mass pay, 1 to manage our strategic team, enterprise ERP rep, and then a Microsoft rep. And then we're done for the year, thankfully, because it takes a lot of time. And that's one of the biggest things I learned was pencil away as much time as you can to interview, because we hired an awesome team, and that's what made this work. People have different philosophies on hiring. I think it's better to wait to find the right person, but that takes a lot more time.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends. Like obviously managing a bigger partner, somebody like Microsoft, where it's like, well, we need somebody on this. It's hard when you have that kind of time constraint. But when you have that luxury of kind of, look, we got to scale this thing. We need to look for the right person for the right vertical. Obviously, you're going to get more out of it, right?
Yep.
But I mean, so I just want to kind of bring it back. It gives people kind of a perspective into kind of what you guys are doing. So obviously you guys, can you tell us a little bit obviously about just Tipalti in general and kind of what types of partners you guys have? Because the complexity of this is kind of interesting, is because you guys really have, I always compare it to like, asking a graphic designer, who's your potential customer, right? It's like, well, technically every I could do a logo for anybody, right? But how do you specialize, and how do you pick the right projects to work with. So like, as a payment solution, like, first of all, like, what is that? Like, what is it that you guys are doing? And then what types of partners are you guys working with, and what types of partners are you after?
I think a good question. It's at the end of the day, what we really do is as a payment provider, and a little selfless plug here, we help companies pay people, right? Whether that be business to business or business to consumer. We have a basically a platform that we figure out, or our customers tell us who needs to get paid. Like partners, for instance, paying partners is a prime example where we drink our own champagne, where we figure out what the calculation is to pay our partners their commission. We send that file to our application, at which point we pay out in 6 different payment methods: check, PayPal, ACH, wire, international wire, into 190 different countries, 120 different currencies, and reconcile all that back. Generally speaking, we reconcile all that information back to an ERP. So that's where, if you kind of think about where we wanted to partner first, it was based off of ERP ecosystem. So that's why you see NetSuite on there, you see Microsoft, you see Oracle, some of these big name applications that you want to have reconciliation of what the payment is, because it's going to affect the general ledger and a number of different things that the finance team really cares about. But there's a ton of other people who have influence over those who are buying. And that's what we really started to take a look at. Who has influence over our ideal customer profile? You have the ERP directly, who has an influence over it. Then you have all of their resellers too. So we need to get penetration into those markets and figure out who all the resellers of NetSuite are, of Microsoft, of Oracle. And that becomes really interesting. And that is much more, you can see that line a lot clearer than you can in some of the areas where we've explored into. And we started going into the private equity and venture capitalist space, because they have a lot of say and a lot of influence over the customers that we're going after, especially our target market, our customers who are quickly growing, which have a higher propensity to be leveraging a PE or a VC firm than others. So we started leveraging our network and the investors in Tipalti first to see if they could help us in some of the accounts we were going after. That proved out really quickly, and it didn't take a whole lot of effort on our side to prove it out. And once we proved it out, we hired someone for it and to go proactively work with all these other PE and VC firms. And then we started thinking about, like, who else has influence over it. That's how I look at the partner landscape, is exactly like the graphic designer does. Everyone could be a partner for us because everyone has influence over a customer, whether it be the owner's cousin or it's their ERP, that company that sold them their application.
Yeah, I mean, because it's like, the thing about it is that, with payment solutions, like when I was at Proposify, it was the same thing as, like, we had, a few hundred affiliates, right? And some of them are earning, I don't know, 10%, 15%. Some of them are earning maybe, $200 in commission. Some of them are earning a couple of grand in commission, and how to send those payments in a cost-effective way without, and you'd be surprised how many people are kind of jumping through these spreadsheets of, like, okay, like, partner A gets $5. You're not going to wire them that money. That doesn't make any sense. Are you going to PayPal them? Well, if they're in a country where PayPal doesn't exist, there's just complexities. And I always think of it as like this, like, thing that nobody cares about and everybody needs. It's like, I just want to send them this thing. I want to focus on enablement and working with the customer. I just want this taken care of. But it's one of those things that everybody has. Like we were talking about, I think I was talking to your marketing manager the other day about, the game development and interactive media, like those microtransactions. You're like literally sending payouts and payments and conversations automatically. And everybody always defaults to, like, okay, well, let's use the well-known brands, right? But they might not be the right fit. And then you're looking at like 150, 190 countries. It's incredible. Like, so I think like that partner ecosystem for you guys is so important, because the idea of payments and sending payments and compensation payments, all that stuff by country differ, right? There's like regulations, there's tax compliances, all these complex things, right? So obviously having the right partner that knows all about that and can actually get to the right customers and kind of serve as that filter is like essential, right? but it's how did you guys like really, like, what were the first few that you got? They were like, okay, yeah, these are these are exactly the ones we need. How can we get more of these? Like, can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and how I segmented to find
Yeah,
out the
yeah,
ideal
like
partner profile.
between all the different ones. Like, I mean, it could be literally game development, partnerships, like all these different verticals around. Like, well, how did you pick the top performing ones and like really focus in?
It was tough. So Salesforce, I'm sure a lot of you guys start with Salesforce and you have that as your record. It's not built for partners, to say the least, right? It's really hard to get data out that's meaningful for partners. So that was one of the first things I needed to do, is to just be able to figure out what was even a partner deal. And then once we started getting that into place, and a way to track it, then we were able to kind of go back and see who those right ones were. It was difficult because we had like 8 referrals in Q1 of 18. That doesn't give you a whole lot of data. But it gave us something to go off of and some hunches. And then we started talking to other people who were in the fintech space, and we started talking to a NetSuite where I kind of cut my teeth. So I have a lot of relationships there, and we're able to really kind of test out our theories. And luckily enough, we were right in a lot of them. But it was really based off of average selling price, the close rate, and number of opportunities from the partners. That were the 3 key metrics I looked at to determine what partners were the best. And then we just kind of, we put headcount where it was the best, and then didn't limit any of our alliance managers into any other areas they wanted to explore. Now that was kind of the coolest things. And when I was an individual contributor, I really loved, right, not being pigeonholed into just one silo. I got to go be a true business development executive and find cool areas and prove them out. And our team did that. And so we were able to kind of go into different areas. We also leveraged our product team based off of where we were going to help us determine where to start looking and seeding for new partners. So that was helpful as well, to leverage our internal product team.
Nice. I've got a question here from Steve Stewart. What is the role of partner delivered services to overall economic value proposition you are taking to partners? Partner delivery service. What is the role of partner delivery services to the overall economic value proposition?
Yeah. So if this might be asking if our partners are actually doing implementation services or anything along those lines.
Yeah, like what are they actually, like what are the partners bringing to the table? Is it a straight referral, like, hey, you need to talk to these guys, or are they hand holding them and adding additional services to it? It might be accounting services, bookkeeping, I'm not sure. Have you seen any trends around that, like what they're providing?
Yep, that's a great question. So I'm going to bring this back up here a little bit too, and kind of talk through that piece of it. So we started on referrals alone to begin with, because it's a lot easier to track and it's a lot easier to prove it out. I don't want to go into resell too soon, because there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built in order to handle that effectively, not only for Tipalti or for whatever your company is, but also for the partner itself too. So it's not just getting an order form ready for them. There's a bunch of internal things that need to be done. Your Salesforce system, your legal team needs to be involved in creating the contract. Implementation needs to be able to train partners on how to implement. Other nuances to your business need to be put in place with a reseller perspective in mind. So we've purposefully shied away from that, and we're building that out slowly but purposefully. So right now it's all just referral, and that kind of ties back to the 0 to 20. Right now we're at 24 roughly % of source bookings come from our team. So we're getting to that 30% a lot quicker than I thought we would, which is awesome. But it's also kind of scary, like what next? Once you get your goal, what next? What are they going to put in front of me next time? But it's really focused on that referral piece. We'll soon get into that kind of reseller, and then the partners being able to do implementation and delivery. And then there's also a whole nother concept of outsourced accounting firms being able to leverage our platform on behalf of their customers, which is almost like a reseller model. It's more of a co-sell model. Then there's also a whole nother model where it's an embedded application. So the way our platform works, we can be embedded with inside of like even a PRM would be a prime example, where we're embedded in a PRM and it looks just like the PRM branding, or your company branding, should it be branded the same for the PRM, where we can spit out the payments on behalf. And that's another co-sell or kind of a resell model too. But to answer the question, it's mostly focused on referral right now. And we changed our contracts to be much more lucrative. We found that partners, in my experience, partners don't really care. The revenue that they make isn't the number one reason why they're partnering with you. And I think that should be the case. But we're finding more and more, since we're paying partners and we're able to do it on time and efficiently, that they're caring more and more about it. Plus, we created a model that can go into perpetuity, or at least a 5-year, which is really reasonable, should they continue to give us more and more opportunities each year. So long way to answering the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, because the second question was around kind of what are those best received or most requested kind of partner enablement assets and resources. Are you providing those referral partners with resource? I'm assuming you're running, maybe like social campaigns, or at least giving them resources to kind of run certain campaigns for those referrals, or are you relying on them to be purely kind of word of mouth, like individual reaching out to their contacts and doing the referral? Like, what is that motion? Like, what is that kind of sales enablement for a partner motion?
Yeah, I think it takes a long time to get a partner to be fully ramped too. It's you can't put really time around it. It's actually number of at bats. I think it's a better way to look at it for a partner to be fully enabled. We started off with just ourselves building the deck out and tweaking the sales deck to make it look a little bit more partner friendly. They look pretty janky, I'm sure, at first, because I did it and I'm not a graphic designer. But it seemed to work a little bit. So we did a lot of hand holding with the partner, sitting in on calls with them, with their customers, is really, help them figure out who's a good fit and who's not. And to answer the question of what's the most requested, it's really a battle card for partners. Really, like, here are the 5 things you need to listen for. Here's what an ideal customer is for us. Here's what we're not good at. I think that's really important too, not only for the partner, but for Tipalti as a whole. If you tell them when not to give you a deal, it doesn't tarnish their reputation with the end customer, which is most important to them. If they're sending you deals and you keep saying, no, that's not a good fit, and they've already told their customer about you, you're ruining their relationship with their customers, and that's going to ruin your relationship with them. So yeah, I think a well thought out battle card is great.
Yeah, I think the enablement piece there for you is really just setting expectations to make sure that, because I mean, the motion you guys have is simple in its delivery. We send payments at a cost-effective way to 190 countries in a way that you don't have. It's not a heavy lift for you. So the action is simple. However, there's, like you said, they might be looking for 192nd country that you don't cover, or something else. So it's more or less on the alignment on expectations, so that when they bring in that customer, they're not burning a bridge by saying something that they shouldn't.
Yep.
So it's a little bit unique, but still that totally makes sense. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought you guys implemented a PRM, partner relationship software. Did you not? Or like,
we're in the process right now.
Okay.
And I that ties back to, so one of the things that we got budget for was a PRM, and we proved out the budget, or I built a model based off of just 0.25 more opportunities per rep per quarter based off of having a PRM, because it was already something that my CFO is tied to, as opportunities per full-time equivalent alliance manager. So I just keep tying everything back to that because it's a metric she knows and we proved out. So I don't think that's unrealistic to get just a quarter more per rep per quarter, and that paid for itself in spades through it. So we're implementing Zift right now, Zift One Solutions, but there's a bunch of really good ones out there too. It was really between Zift and Allbound for us and our evaluations, and that's going to help us really get the collateral and the marketing material out to our partners. It can be co-branded, so it looks like partner ABC and Tipalti. They just download it, send to all their customers. We can track where it went, how many times it was opened, et cetera. So it's really going to help us be much more efficient with our partners and help them market Tipalti too.
Nice. So that's kind of the next step, I guess. It's like you've proven out the model, you've got the team in place. Now it's like leveling every single kind of, I don't know, like beta version of the partner program to say, okay, like let's put a kick-ass design on this vertical. I'm assuming you guys are you going with a like vertical specific to partners? Like, are you segmenting partners by, okay, they're in financial services, they're in healthcare, they're game development, SaaS, like so whatever.
Yeah,
How do you envision configuring that PRM to suit your needs?
you're spot on. So there's a number of different things. So um, we always start off with just a holistic one size fits all model, and then really start to break it down, because I want to give all of our partners something they can use right away. And then we start refining and saying, okay, we'll tweak the messaging here for private equity firms, et cetera. But we break down by financial. It's basically kind of like my org chart. If you think about it, that's how I kind of break it down um, for the different groups. So like I have NetSuite specific materials, small ERP materials, mass pay, which is more like gig economy, right? So if you think about like the game industries or PRMs, basically payments without invoices is what this group looks after here. And then the Sage and Intact marketplace are separate. Then financial services, GSIs being like Accenture, Deloitte, RSM, et cetera, they have a much different feel and motion to it. And then enterprise ERP will have their own, and then ISVs, other platforms too, right? So they have a different feel of what they need. And this one can get broken down into tons of different industry types. So we've created material that fits all of it, and now we're segmenting it by the different partners. And then geo is important for us too as well, because especially in fintech and what we're doing, there's different rules and regulations, different things that's important, and different functionality that we have based off of where the partners' customers sit. So we've broken it down based off of geo as well.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's no, that's great. And I'm assuming that's the PRM part of it is you're going to actually segment so that when they actually go in, it's like that partner is put in that bucket, and everything about that experience talks to them. It's like, okay, I'm a partner in the healthcare industry or whatever. Every single collateral, everything kind of speaks to you.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense. I did have one more question around the kind of structure of your team. I know, forgive me if I'm wrong, but when you came on, you were reporting into marketing department, right? And now it's through your CRO. Like, can you kind of talk about a little bit about that structure of, who you're reporting to, what they're at? You kind of touched on a little bit on the CFO and kind of, the metric that they want to see, and you always kind of bring it back to that. But what was the difference between reporting into marketing and reporting now into sales? Because I think partnerships usually lands in one or the other bucket, right? And they all have their benefits and downfalls depending on what the product and target is. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. So I'm really blessed to be able to do that. Not everyone gets to kind of report to both sides and to learn this or have that experience, but I get to draw so much from the CMO still, who we used to report to. So that's, for me personally, it's been great to have two C-level mentors that I've got to learn a lot from, our CMO and our CRO. But the big difference is for us, it's kind of, I was selling the future to the CMO, right? It was much more, this is future case, and like it didn't have to have as hard of numbers around it. And the goals were different. They could just be like more qualitative as opposed to quantitative. Now they're much more quantitative, which is completely fine, because it's just how I write my QBRs and my decks to the board are just different, because the metrics he cares about are different than what the CMO cared about. I would say that we had a ton more support. I don't want to say a ton more support, ton more visibility in the marketing org. So we were able to get more help when it came to doing webinars with partners or podcasts, or we have a ton of different things. And I think that's important when we were small to report through the marketing org, because we got a lot more visibility to build awareness around our partnerships and our partnership program. And that's really what helped us out. We have 400 plus partners now that are signed, and probably an extra 150 that aren't signed partners that we're doing business with. And I credit the marketing team for being able to help us do that. Conversely, now we're under the sales organization, which is much more structured. but we're getting a bunch more support too. So we still have one person as partner marketing, as you mentioned, you've spoke with Evan before, who helps us out a ton. He reports up through marketing. I'll just share this again. We have a ton of additional support that we got through the sales organization. So partner enablement really comes from the sales enablement umbrella. So we're getting more dedicated support there to help almost facilitate my biggest goals this year, which are partner enablement and alliance manager enablement too, to get them up to speed up that ramp time. We're also get partner operations now, which is basically sales operations with partner on top of it, and then a solution consultant, which is really under the sales umbrella too. So we get a lot more support from the sales organization and closer alignment to the sales reps too. One of the biggest challenges I think for all alliance professionals is working with the sales team, for better or for worse. And it's important for them to know that we're their customers, and it's important for us to know that they're our customers. And it's a symbiotic relationship. We're not just feeding them, they need to feed us too. They need to ask all of their customers who's influencing their decisions, because then we know who the new partners are that we need to go out and after. They need to communicate with us and how the deals are going that our partners brought them, right? So we can have a really clear line of communication. So it's brought us closer in that regard with the sales reps to have a better relationship and to work in a more symbiotic manner.
That's amazing. I do have a question here from the group on kind of that partner profile piece of it. You touched on it a little bit, just segmenting by the actual kind of vertical. But are you revisiting that ideal partner profile from time to time as well? Because I mean, obviously, something that maybe was ideal partner a year and a half ago, maybe slightly different now. Can you kind of comment a little bit more on that, building out that partner profile and where you see it going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's really important. I think when you're first building out, you're going to take any partner that fits into a very broad spectrum of ideal partner profile, because you need to prove it out. And then I think you have a propensity, or we did, and it was a mistake that I made, of getting almost too narrow, because you really want to get the best hitters for you. And once you get those enabled, you start to get a little bit more time to go revisit those other players that were on the fringe of the ideal partner profile. And those are the ones that can be really great. The way I think about what each alliance manager can really manage is somewhere between 25 and 35 producing partners. You're going to have 3 or 4 in the top tier. You're going to have maybe 6 to 8 in the second tier. And from there, you'll have maybe 17 to 25 in the third tier. And you need to keep filling those that funnel back up and constantly reevaluating what partners are in the patch. Some of them get acquired. Some of them are going to be new partners of the ecosystem are fitted to, right? So you got to constantly be looking out for who those new partners are. And as to tie back to kind of working for the CRO now, we change our sales philosophy from time to time too, right? And so we open up new product that's better fit for smaller customers, or a new product that's going to be better fit for enterprise customers. And that changes who our ideal customer profile is, which has a huge impact on who our ideal partner profile is, because your ideal partner profile is really partners who have influence over your ideal customer profile.
Yeah, I mean, I find a lot of the number one mistake people make is that they kind of put that upfront work to be like, okay, here's our partner profile, or 3 or 4 or whatever, and it's done. It's like, okay, now moving on to the next one, and you don't really realize that you're just like your product feature and feature sets change, your marketing tactics, your feel, everything about the company is evolving, especially when you're a younger company. Your partner profile will change as well, and it needs to. But the only complexity with that, I guess, same as I guess having a customer you don't want anymore, which happens a lot. You have a partner now that was a fit, is no longer a fit. And how do you have you had that experience yet, where you're like, okay, I gotta let this partner go. How do I do it? Have you been in that position yet?
That's a good question. A little bit. And I thought about that. It's important to think about for sure. And it's important to write your referral agreements and your partnership agreements with that in mind, to easily have a breakup, right?
There's nothing wrong with that. It's like, it's
No.
gonna happen,
Yeah.
whether it's a bad reason, not so bad reason, or just, moving on, or at least cleaning house, they're not engaged and haven't been engaged for a year. There could be a variety of reasons, but having something in place that allows you to do that, right?
100%. And it also depends on the type of referral arrangement or a partnership arrangement. If it's a referral, I'm not probably ever going to get rid of that partner, because you never know when one day they're going to say, Zach, we have a customer finally. It could be 5 years from now. Great, I'll pay you for it, right? Or whatever. Like, I don't want to get rid of that, but resellers, you definitely do. And that's where it gets tricky, to build in out clauses with inside of your partnership. And those can sometimes get ugly, right? There's contention there, and it can feel personal when it's really not. The best way to handle it, as I'm sure everyone knows, right, is just having a complete level of transparency with everybody and say, this is why, this is the business reason behind it.
Yeah, I wish you could have that in like the dating world, to set out expectations. We have come 6 months further into this, and clearly there's no way forward in which we can, build together. And thank you very much, but according to section whatever, we're no longer a fit. But it's nice to have that with in a professional matter, where it's like, hey, it's not that you did anything wrong or we did it right. We grew apart, and here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna move on, and here's why. It's just something, definitely to keep in mind, and especially when there's a financial aspect like your guys' product, where it's a pretty important and pretty kind of stringent practice, right? So you can't. There's really no wiggle room around where you need to agree on, right?
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna have a couple more questions here to get through. We've got about 10 more minutes. I do have a couple of questions on mine as well, but we got a question here from Ross Klurman. What marketing motions and activities and campaigns have yielded the most inbound demand? So we've talked about this before, in the sense of, what is that MQL for partners? Like, how are you pulling in potential? Are you doing any specific campaigns around, creating demand and pulling in interest from potential partners?
Yeah, we've done a bunch, and it's really just, I don't want to say putting lipstick on a pig, but it kind of is, in the sense where we just use what sales is already, or marketing is already developed for the sales. And we invite partners and prospective partners, but we say, instead of learn how you can, learn how your customers can, right? And I think that's important. And partners understand that they're not going to get a full webinar that's just dedicated to learn how your customers can. If they go to it, they can put themselves in the shoes, right? So we leverage that a lot. Webinars with big names like KPMG, interesting topics that their customers need to know about, and make it as informational as possible. I'm not a huge fan of trying to get partners, not selling partners. They need to sell themselves and why they should partner with you. And I think that's important too, as well. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's still an evolving thing, I find, because it's really difficult to go to a traditional kind of marketing model for recruiting partners, right? Unless your business is selling to partners, right? Like there are organizations out there that, whether it's on training side of it, usually see it on the training, where they're 90% of their business is selling through partners. So technically all the motions that they're going through on the market, like in just a broader market, in terms of marketing function, is speaking to potential partners.
Mm-hmm.
But when that's not 100% or 90%, when it's 30 or 40, less than half, it becomes interesting, because you don't want mixed messaging out there as well, because you want to be able to speak to your customer directly. So how do you speak to partners and kind of create that funnel of, marketing qualified partners, right? Coming in, you asking, hey, I saw this, or I saw this white paper, I want to be a partner, right? Where do you see that going? Like, I mean, these things are getting more sophisticated every day, every week. And it kind of flows into my next question around, like, where do you see this program in general going? Like, your team is, going to be 20 in the next few weeks. You've onboarded 10 in the last 6 months. Like, what does the next year to 2 years look for you?
Yeah. So exciting, first of all. I love it, right? I mean, I think that as again, most alliance professionals and partnership people love to build stuff and love to really get their hands dirty and figure out problems. So I'm super excited about it. I'm lucky enough, I'm blessed enough to be part of Tipalti, which we have growth, awesome growth too. So it's I benefit from that a lot. But from a partnership perspective, there becomes a point of saturation in some of the ecosystems too, right? So I can't have a one-to-one relationship with each NetSuite reseller out there, or Microsoft reseller. So it's I need to be cautious of that. I think next year, realistically, I see about 8 to 12 additional headcount, which will be sounds like a lot, which it is a lot, but it's in retrospect or in relativity to this year, it's not so much. And I see kind of a couple different things happening next year. I see financial services organizations taking on their own group. I expect to see a lot more traction there, probably splitting out private equity firms with venture capitalist firms because, and I didn't know this at all until we started digging into it. They're completely different. Their profile of their customers is completely different. It's a completely different motion. I would have never guessed that, but it is. So we're finding when we're going into these new ecosystems, we're finding out that there's a bunch of nuance to it. Like a BPO versus an outsourced accounting versus outsourced CFO. They all sound like they're the same, but they're all completely different. We're going to start segmenting, being more specialized in who the alliance managers are managing to be better educated for those partners and be a better resource for those partners too. I see also having another layer of management kind of sit in here as well too, to take on some of the additional workload. And also maybe some more support from partner operational specialists too, because it's there's so much going on, so many different projects that me personally, I'm not a great project manager because my brain doesn't work that way. And so we could definitely use someone in the group to do that as well too. But I see us also going into different ecosystems. So we'll be going into, we just opened up an office in the UK. We'll hit mainland Europe here in the next 6 months or maybe 9 months. From there, we'll go into Australia, New Zealand, and then up into APAC, and then from there, who knows? So,
oh my God, that's exciting. One question kind of comes up, and maybe this could be the kind of takeaway is on the providing some advice out there. I think what you just described there, and also just this in general kind of building of the program and everything that's associated with it and all the complexities. I think that the key thing here is like, how do you create that internal organizational buy-in for this, right? Like you cannot build an entire department and have, revenue being driven, say, you're well on the way to getting half the revenue from partners. You don't get there without getting, really kind of solid agreement from a leadership point of view on what partnerships represents, the resources you're going to need, the support you're going to need, and how the entire organization, everybody in it views partnerships and supports it. What kind of advice would you offer to somebody that's kind of building that framework on like how, you can't ignore it. You got to have those conversations. How do you approach those conversations with those C-level executives on creating a partnership centric, I guess, organization?
Yeah. It all comes down to data as far as I'm concerned. I'm a data junkie. I love looking at data and I can easily get lost in the spreadsheets. I have way too many of them where I track weird pieces of data, but data is key. And then having one solid unifying theme across all the data is important because then you're telling a story not only to yourself, but to other people too. So for me, it's qualified opportunities per rep. And that's really the unifying theme across all of the things that I'm presenting to our C-level to get their buy-in. And also, I think it's in order to get their buy-in, I am so happy that they came up with the goal themselves of 30%, as opposed to me saying it, because my mentor says this all the time. I think it's important for everyone to have a mentor and someone else that they can spitball with, and that's why the CSA is so great, right? Because you can bounce ideas off of each other. But it comes down to scope, time, and budget, right? Those are always three things in everything in life. And you always say, I'll give you two of those, right? Evan, you can pick the scope and you can pick the timeline, I get to pick the price, right? And that's as always fair. So like letting people feel like they're making the decision and picking two of the three when you really are the driver, as long as they pick their two first, you can really drive everything. And I think that's a great tool for me to be able to use internally too. Say, all right, you want to pick the goal of 30% in 2 years? Well, great, I'm picking budget. Then what budget means to me is I need 100 million people to be able to do that, right? Or whatever it is. So it's a great tool to use in order to get what you need.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in partnership generally, it's not really a mistake because you do need to have that, but going into those types of meetings with a vision of here's what it's going to be, here's I call it the kind of the time machine kind of statement where it's like here's where we're going to be next year, here's how that's going to happen. It's really exciting, and this is what's going to build for the company from marketing point of view, brand awareness, revenue, all of that stuff, and kind of build that story, and you get the senior team excited about it, and that's great. You have to have that, but and I think you'll agree. Inevitably, what happens is they settle down. Things get busy. They may get pissed off over one thing or another, and life happens. And generally, those stories are like completely shoved to the side, and they don't care. It's like show me the numbers. Because numbers never lie. You could be in the crappiest mood in the world, but you're reading numbers and it's like great, plus means plus, no matter if you're in a bad mood or not. So having that data, any sort of it, like it's even starting whatever you have, like if it's one partner, how many deals they're bringing in, and how do you attribute that to the time that you've put in? Any sort of metrics you can start with and then build on them. You can use to say, great, here's the story. Here's the vision, which is awesome, but here's how we're progressing against the math, right?
100%.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are at time here, but Zach, thanks a lot for joining us. Yeah, Zach is a CSA member and an executive member, and hopefully some of you will join us in the executive side of things where we do kind of have these discussions. And Zach, I think you pointed out, having people to bounce ideas off of on this stuff is absolutely so critical in building these things. It's really tough to be that one or two person team without having kind of a network to support you. And I think that's what CSA does for a lot of people. So thanks for being a member. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, we'll take the conversation to Slack and have some more discussions.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for giving me the opportunity, and feel free anyone to reach out to me, and if I can ever help out, I will. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.